Hello, this is Dan back at Peralta Labs again. Over in the Peralta Labs, room 103, we have a couple soldering stations. We're just going to give you a brief kind of introduction to those so you know how to turn the units on and off and to set the temperatures on the units. Okay, to use the this particular soldering iron station, which controls, by the way, two separate irons, there's an on-off switch located in the back. So it's a little toggle switch in the back that'll turn the unit on. Okay, so that powers up the display. That does not actually turn the heat on to the actual irons. In order to do that, located on each side for each iron are two little pads on the display. You must push down and hold each of those, and that will turn that one on. And when you do that, it'll display the temperature of the actual soldering iron. So at the soldering iron, you notice that a little blue light or blue ring lights up on the iron to tell us that that particular iron is active. Okay? Now the temperature, you'll see it will climb up to the set point temperature. All the soldering irons already have a pre-programmed set point temperature. If you would like to change that, all you have to do is kind of rotate the temperature knob here and rotate it around until it gets to the desired temperature. In this case, I set it to 709 degrees. You must press the center button, the inner button, in order to enter that particular temperature, and then the iron will adjust its temperature so that you have that. You notice that my iron is still active and it's going to that new temperature. So anytime I want to change that, all I have to do is come back up, rotate this, just kind of drag my finger around the circle until I get to that temperature, hit the enter button, and it'll readjust to that new temperature. Why would you need to do that? Because maybe you are using particular solder that has a higher melting temperature. For example, a lead-free solder always has a higher temperature for melting point. You can always look at the spec sheet for your particular type of temperature for your solder and make the adjustment on there as necessary. Remember, when you're using that, at each solder station we have solder. Whenever you're using this soldering iron and going to leave it set, always add that solder onto there so it keeps the tip nice and clean for it. These particular solder irons use a little Brillo sponge on them. So that little Brillo sponge, you do not have to add water to it. You can just take your iron and clean the tip off on that sponge. Okay, so don't add water to this particular type, only to the sponge type of irons. It's very important whenever you get done with your soldering that you turn it off. And again, the switch is located in the back. You can just flick that switch and turn it off whenever you're done with your particular station. If you need to have both your soldering irons active, again, you can just go to the other side, and now you'll see, I just pressed both buttons down, you'll see both irons are active. So if you need to use both irons, you'll have them both active. And again, the temperature can be set independently on each side. Again, always remember, turn the unit off when you're done. Hello, Dan again. Here at the Peralta Labs room 103, we also have a second type of soldering station. This one is generally used for surface mount parts or desoldering or standard soldering. We also have available for pencil tip irons that you can ask the lab workers for, and they'll be able to supply that for very, very fine soldering. In order to use this station, we have to turn it on. And in the front, rather than in the back this time, there's a little toggle switch that we can turn the unit on. You notice that it has three separate positions on this one because we're controlling three different types of irons. The first iron that we have is a hot air iron. In other words, it's going to blow out hot air in order to melt the solder around surface mount parts. The second type iron that we have with this station is just a standard soldering iron, much like we showed you in the previous station. And the third type that we have is an iron that's used for desoldering. You can set this over a pin and it has a little vacuum button here that will suck the solder off the board for you or suck it off the solder joint. And also we have one other fourth type of tool with this particular station. It's a little air pickup tool that you can use to pick up or place a surface mount part onto a board or use it for removing that part. So those are the four different types of devices that go with this particular station. Now, to turn this on, we have down at the bottom here, we have a selector button with a 1, 2, and 3 on it. That can be used, and you'll notice that as I press the button, I go from station 1, station 2, station 3, depending on which type of things I like to operate. So currently right now, the hot air station is on station number 1. So if I wanted to use the hot air machine, I would move this over until the red light lit up on number 1. If I want to use the standard soldering iron, I would just press the button until the 2 lights up, and now that'll tell me that 2 is in use. And of course, if I want to do solder removal with the vacuum system, I would press 3, and that would count to this one. So to turn each of the channels on, just like with the previous one, and I'll go, in this particular case, I'll just go over to the regular soldering iron, number 2. To turn it on, again, you have to hold down both the buttons to turn it on and off. So I'll turn it on, and then I can use the up button here in order to set the new temperature for that particular iron. And again, the temperature that you want to set is going to be dependent upon the type of solder that you happen to be using. So I can set the temperature. You'll notice that over here, since I have 2 selected, that the green light now is flashing and telling me that I'm up to temperature now for that particular iron. And so now I would be able to grab my center iron and begin soldering with it. Again, when there's sponges, not sponges, but Brillo pad type solder cleaners for it. Again, don't add water to those, and always tin your tip once you're done, again, soldering with that particular station. Now, in order to, I'm going to move over to the next station here by pressing the button. You'll see 3 go active. It's off. I'll hold both buttons down to turn it on. Okay, for using the hot air iron, which just basically blows hot air out of here to melt the solder for surface mount components, there's a button here on the front panel labeled air, and you can use that button and use the up and down arrows to increase or decrease the amount of hot air that's being blown out of this tip. So you can use that in order to set that amount of air. Of course, if it's a bigger part, you're probably going to want more air volume being forced out of that tip. Okay? The other type of tool that we have with it that I mentioned earlier was the little pickup tool. And on pickup, there's a separate button right here called pickup that we can press. You'll hear a little vacuum pump light come on. On the side of the actual pencil, there's a little hole here that you can put your finger over, and that will allow you to actually pick up parts, or if you let your finger off, that will release the part for you. So you can use that. You can experiment a little bit with it for your particular part and see where that's at. So those are the 4 basic tools that we have associated with this station. And again, well, when you're done with the station, don't forget to always tin the tips on your iron and then turn the iron station off. Okay, today we've talked about our 2 types of soldering stations we have here in Peralta 103. Just a little reminder for you. If it's ever the case where there's something wrong with the iron, or you need a new tip, or something's missing there, please always just let myself or one of the student workers here in the lab know so that we can get it replaced or repaired. Thank you very much.